I took my avatar back on Tour Hill and started wandering, finding the casino populated with dozens of sprites, but no other players. I tried my light-sucking power on the many neon signs, but it had little effect, and the nearest sign just flickered before going back to normal. I stepped into the light and flinched in my computer chair as a sprite shrieked and ran away. I could be seen in the blocky pixel light, but didn't know if it mattered until a number of sprites began to surround my avatar. Their shouting was gibberish mostly, but I caught the drift. What the hell is that? I took off into darker places, finding another alley to hide in, and chuckled as some NPCs hesitated by the entrance. This was such an immersive game, and I was hooked. I knew I wouldn't be going to sleep tonight. There was another exit to the alley. I left and wandered through familiar sights around Bridal Veil Lake. I saw other players and tried to interact, but they quickly fled, which made me wonder if I could attack them. The idea of killing other avatars was thrilling. How had this company gone belly up? On a whim, I decided to find my neighborhood. I was certain the game designers hadn't included the more residential areas, but I was wrong. The screen kept scrolling, and suddenly the Wraith was on my street. Whoa, I told Bill. This is nuts. The street lights, the cars parked on the street, even the houses were accurately placed and colored. My elation diminished quickly, however, when I brought the Wraith to the digital version of my home. There were no pixelated lights on, but there were flashes from a window of the second floor. My bedroom window, to be exact, where I was playing the game being depicted. I refrained from telling Bill about it, but this was kind of impossible. Removing my hands from the mouse and keyboard, I leaned back and looked at my actual window. If I moved the Wraith into the light, would I be able to see it? Like, really see it out my real window? I started to panic. Of course I couldn't see it in real life. This was a game, not some cautionary tale about satanic dangers within enjoyment. Whether or not I was crazy, or an idiot took a back seat to the appearance of 3 other ghostly characters approaching from the other end of the rendered street. These were clearly players like me. One looked like the skull wisp thing I'd followed down the alley where I'd killed the hobo. Another flitted across objects, a shadow carrying a scythe. The last was a Wraith with a longsword. These were higher level characters, I think, though, even if they weren't, they still outnumbered me. I moved my Wraith away from the streetlight and behind the large tree on the front lawn. "You sure he went this way?" said the letters above the Wraith's head. "I've been following him this whole time," said the skull. "If we didn't go back for Matt, I'd still be with him. We'd know his address." "Don't blame me," said the shadow guy, his form cast on the red car my neighbor always parked at the curb. "We need a shade to get us inside," the Wraith said. "And Scout," the shade said. "Phantoms are better," said the skull fog. "A phantom, I'm guessing." "Shut up," the Wraith advised. He could be nearby and watching. "We go in there now. I think it's that one with the light in the window." "Kill that asshole," said the Phantom. "Yeah, teach him to fucking stare at us," the shade added, revealing their identities. It was the locker nerds. Somehow they'd set me up. With a video game? Some kind of lethal video game? That was crazy. No time to mention again, however, the impossibility of such a thing because they started advancing across the screen, the digital street. In my bedroom, I shrieked and stood up, not daring to look away from the computer. "It's a video game," I said. I looked to Bill to back me up. Her head lifted before a knock fell against the front door of the house. "It's a video game!" I wrung my hands as I moved closer to the screen. The enemy Wraith's hands manipulated a minuscule doorknob in the game. My doorknob. It rattled from my speakers. It rattled in real life. The doorway. Both opened. They were coming. Bill, finally, cautiously arose, and her tail began to puff. My bedroom door was already closed. Thankfully, my parents let me have a simple hook and loop lock, so long as I only used it conservatively. It wouldn't stop anyone slamming into it for long and might tear like paper against whatever crept up the stairs. I couldn't hear them, but Bill could. She leapt off the bed and wisely retreated under it, cat eyes glowing as they faced the oncoming threat from relative safety. The thought of cramming in beside her was appealing. Instead, I glanced again at the computer, and Wraith, still tucked behind the tree. One of the three passed briefly by the game's version of the stairway window. They were close. Beneath the real bedroom door crept the soft blue light of the phantom. The skull appeared through the door and no longer appeared graphically crude. No one had made this creature. It existed long before wraith killers and video games and humans too. The hatred in the stirring black pits of its socket eyes said it was so. The skull retracted, and the blue light under the door dissipated. The phantom resumed invisibility. Nothing followed for an agonizing length of time. Bill didn't move, so neither did I, until the shadow appeared in the narrow space between the door and lintel. A shadow hand slid behind the hook, popping it out smoothly, quietly. The door swung open on a dark and empty hallway. They were there, all right. Bill began to hiss. "I'm sorry, all right?" I don't know why. I was whispering when I should have been screaming my head off for my parents. They would rush from their rooms and... I thought about the homeless NPC I had so easily killed. Did that mean... had I? Oh God. The spirits lingered, yet unmoving, perhaps unsure what to do next, or who should make the kill. I couldn't see their conversation because my avatar wasn't near them. My avatar. I'd like to tell you, Mr. Clariot, that I had a sudden electric inspiration to hop on my computer and use my wraith to save the day, but that's not quite how it happened. Moving to the chair, bending to manipulate the mouse and keyboard felt like wading through cemented air. At any moment I could die, and the thought, strangely, just made me tired. They had me. I was an animal on the cusp of accepting my fate. My wraith entered the house as silent as the enemy. The hallway was dark. The graphics portrayed this by only displaying the floor and the outline of a wall. I couldn't see them, and I hoped they couldn't see my avatar. I positioned my back to block the computer screen from their view. In retrospect, I realized they were only seeing my room as a video game. They were watching the sprite version of me sitting at my computer, playing this game. They had no idea if I was truly aware of their presence or just sensed something was off. Even when the door opened, it might have appeared as if I hadn't noticed because they would have only seen the crude NPC go and sit at the computer. I don't know if they heard my apology. The homeless guy had made an audible sound on my speakers. The enemy wraith stepped into the light of my open doorway on the screen. If I looked over my shoulder, away from the screen, I don't know what I would have seen. I am sure, however, I would die. Eyes straight ahead, I snuck my wraith up behind the dark, cloaked player and activated my knife attack. It pierced his back and he shrieked as a health bar appeared and depleted by more than half. I spammed the attack over and over, closing my real eyes, hoping for the best. The stabbing sound came from behind me, not the computer speakers. A loud shriek followed and I felt wind sweep my hair. I opened my eyes, and the phantom and the shade were both ineffectually attacking my wraith. Their associate was gone, and I think I advanced a number of levels or something by killing his avatar. I don't really know. With a single thrust, I dispatched the phantom. Recognizing the predicament, the shade stretched across the floor and swept claws at me, the real me. Felt burning fire across my back. I yelped, but got my wraith to dispose of the shade again, with a single, overpowered knife attack. I sat still for a long time until my dad leaned in the doorway, looking groggy. You still up? Time for bed. Church tomorrow." He was wrong. It was only early Saturday morning, but I didn't disagree, and shut down the computer immediately, which made him suspicious. "Everything okay?" I nodded. It wasn't, obviously. I didn't know how to explain, and I never did. Bill and I lay awake in bed until mid-morning. I uninstalled Wraith Killers and destroyed the CD, tossing the pieces in the garbage at the 7-Eleven. I watched the news with my parents, which earned me some strange looks. I had to know if a body had been found in that alley off Tour Hill. It hadn't. As far as I knew, no one found him. I tried unsuccessfully to delude myself into believing I hadn't killed anyone. The nerds confronted me at school Monday. "Nicely played," one said, while the others nodded. You're the most powerful in the game now." When I gave them my practice stare, the nerds scowled in unison. "You didn't even know." He shook his head. "You absorb all the experience points and powers and items of players you kill." I gave them nothing. I stared. "Look," he said, "you can be the leader. We need to make new characters, but it's really hard to gain levels without a higher level player's help." I had many questions. I didn't ask one. I stared. The lead nerd reddened, visibly angry. "Fine, but don't forget, we know where you live." I grabbed him by the throat and pushed him against the lockers. "I know where you go to school," I said before releasing him. He slunk away, his lackeys in tow. I only saw them a handful of times around school after that. I don't know for sure if they kept playing the game, but I think so. They abandoned their lockers, but I'd see them every so often through the years of high school. They gained a reputation too. Weirdos, Satanists, future serial killers. None of these labels quite described what they were or what they'd become. They didn't walk the stage at graduation. I don't know what happened. Picturing them hunched over their keyboards, sad, psychotic, middle-aged men, was all too easy, though. The taint of wraith killers impacted me differently. I couldn't bring myself to play another video game. It was difficult to sit at a computer to do schoolwork. I turned to sports and religion. My parents were proud of me. Somehow, that's the hardest thing to bear. Proud of me, proud of their son, the wraith killer.